Today our first machine is a job that's a little different. Something I haven't done yet, anyway. This Outlander was previously in for some brake pads. I was working on one of the calipers and I noticed the line looked like it was kinked already. But after I put the pads in and twisted the caliper and the line started leaking. So here we're tearing into it, trying to get the old brake line out. Now on this front rack I encountered a rusty bolt that got stuck in I'll call it a nutsert. It's a nut that's encapsulated in a piece of plastic, and when the nut seized on the bolt, the piece of plastic just started spinning. I had to do some work on that to get that loose. This job I was trying to shortcut it because I could see it kind of being a pain in the butt. Trying to shortcut it every way I could, but I just had to, in the end, go full in and take everything off. I was hoping that I could sneak some lines through somewhere, somehow, but I just had to keep taking things off. So I already got the airbox loose and pulled back. Give me enough room to do what I needed to do. Now I'm down taking all the brake lines loose. This specific line it's for the handbrake, and it applies the front brakes as well as the rear brake. So you see me looking in the footwell there, and that red strap is pulling the plastic back so I can get to the rear master cylinder where it's hooked up. I got the new line here, trying to figure out which lines go where before I shove it down in the hole. We're hooking up the rear master cylinder brake line. There's the right one, and here's the left one. Now we're adding some fluid to the reservoir, and I have a vacuum pump hooked up to the line that I use first, and then I'll go back and I will pump them up by hand and crack them a couple more times each line. Now we're just making sure all the brake lines are secure, and we're putting everything back together now. Securing the airbox and the coolant bottle. Reassembling the hood and the front rack. Cleaning up that nut that was seized and applying anti-seize to everything for the next guy. I can put the front bumper on and hook his auxiliary lights back up. Put the heat shields and the wheels back on. Give the brakes a test. Now the same machine's coming back in because we had to wait for a rear prop shaft. And you'll see when I get the rear prop shaft out, that rear U-joint was really bad. Customer was complaining of a squealing noise under acceleration. Now these Can-Am U-joints have grease zerks on them, and when we have them in for service, we hit them every time. They're usually fairly dry from the factory, so I try, especially for the first service, I will get them greased because they're pretty dry. Now there's 5 bolts that hold the rear differential in place, and then there's a bolt that holds it to the gearbox and a bolt that holds it to the rear differential. Now here you can see all the slop that's in this rear U-joint. It's usually the rear one that goes bad first before the front one. So we'll replace that prop shaft, the whole shaft, and reinstall it here. Now, we replaced the whole prop shaft. We have had quite a few issues with broken yokes, trying to get these U-joints out and just replace the U-joint, like it would be cheaper. But a lot of these prop shaft yokes, they'll bend and or break, and the U-joint just doesn't work right when the yoke is bent. Obviously it doesn't work when it's broken. So we just replaced the whole prop shaft. Now I'll put this thing back together and give it a good test drive before we call the customer. Now this one is a Sportsman 550 gearbox that I had obviously taken apart already. This one came in because it would not shift. Upon disassembly of the gearbox, I found the shift drum was broken and it would not properly move the shift fork. Here I'm just disassembling everything. This shaft is part of the input shaft from the engine, and the coupler, the nut that holds the coupler on, had come loose and caused a bit of damage to that shaft, so we replaced that while we were in here. Now this job was a disassemble and wait for parts kind of job, so here you see me assembling it for the first time. It comes back apart here in a little bit because I had forgotten something, and obviously waiting for parts for I don't remember how long, even a week. You can forget where things go, so you put it together and you see something else on the bench, you're like, oh yeah, that goes here, I gotta take this back apart to put that in. So here we are taking it apart again. These gearboxes are a little strange because there's an input. Usually on a four-wheeler, the engine is directly connected to the clutch. The clutch bolts on right to the crankshaft. These 850, 1000, 550s aren't that way. They have a coupler that goes into the gearbox, and then that far shaft in the middle there is actually where the clutch bolts on. That tapered shaft there is where the clutch bolts on. So it's not, the clutch isn't directly bolted onto the crankshaft like most four-wheelers. This is that coupler I was talking about, the nut that came loose. Caused some damage to that shaft. We'll shift it through all the gears and make sure all the gears work before we put it back in the machine. We'll get the front prop shaft hooked up, and then we'll sit and struggle to try and get the engine mated up with gearbox, that coupler. Putting what you could call the bell housing bolts in, mating the gearbox to the engine. Installing the gearbox mounts, one on each side. And then we'll fill this gearbox up with some fresh AGL. This clutch backer doesn't have any seals per se, like some of the things I work on. It's just RTV'd on, so we'll scrape all that off and put a fresh bead on it before we install it. Put some anti-seize on the prop shaft splines and then install those bolts for the rear prop shaft. We'll blow all the clutch dust out of the clutches before installing them. Not much to see because all the work is done on the other side. Look up all the shift linkage. Hoses, a couple of sensors to hook up, gear position and a speed sensor. We'll install both clutches and the clutch cover. Before we'll get this thing all back together, give it a test drive. Call the customer. That's all for this one. We'll see you next time.